talking different stages of life. I mean, Lou, I think you've talked about in the past, like being in the church.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see you as that churchgoer anymore.
No,
you know,
not even close to that. No. No, but yeah, that was a really huge crisis for me. Like, always, whenever I talk about it with people, it's like it amazes them to see that different perspective of like coming out of like a strict religious upbringing and stuff, and then, you know, and the way how it can be so cultish and it can be so insulating, and that's just like your whole world. That's like, you go to church and these are the people you associate with, hang out every day with or weekly, and you know, and it's just this whole culture. It's like a subculture within the culture. And so you're kind of just in this thing, and so your brain is getting shaped to believe the reality of this, you know, the reality that this is reality, this is the world right here, this is your world,
how it should be and all that.
Yeah, and so just all the rules given to you, everything kind of being explained to you, or every answer that's out, like for every question out there, you have the answer. It's Jesus Christ, you know, or just pray and, you know, read your Bible more and whatever, you know. So it's just like, so that's your world. And so for me, like, things started to fall apart for me when I was like around my mid-20s. So I was like born and raised in church and all that, and so my mid-20s, that's when I left the church. But what kind of started like kind of just like the whole crashing down of that was like for me, me going to college for sure started opening up my mind about that, about just things and questioning things. And then there was like a crisis within the church too, and so there was like this church split going on, so it just became like really ugly. And I think I just started seeing people turn on each other and just like not being Christian, you know? So I'm just like I just really started questioning a lot about things, about like, man, is this even real? Like, what is this all about? And then then I started going to college, and so that's when like I got into classes. We got into like a philosophy class. I got into a human sexuality class.
Free thinking.
You started opening your mind.
Started opening my mind, dude. And this was crazy. I was in that class, in the human sexuality class, and this was the first time I ever heard about like intersex people. And I'm just like, what is that about? I'm like, and then I started like, I was like, what? They can be like that? I'm like, I thought it was like these two, like your dick and vagina, and that's it. You know what I mean? Or like, that's it. Or just like thinking of it just like male and female and very binary.
More than that.
Yeah. So it's like been a binary way of view of looking at that. And so for me, it just opened my eyes. I'm like, whoa, like, and just the questions started coming, you know? And then, yeah, they just started falling like a house of cards, man, everything for me. And it was liberating at the same time, but very like scary too, you know, because it was like, all right, this was all fake. You know, this wasn't the truth, you know? So like my like really belief system about the world was like very like, damn, it's been a lie.
Real Matrix.
Yeah. It's like that. It's like taking the red pill or the blue pill, you know? And it's like
A fork in the road right there.
A fork in the road. And it was just like eye-opening for everything for me. And so, but then again, it got scary and dark because I had to figure out like, who am I? Like, who am I without that, without the church, without the church identity and the label of being a Christian and having your community there and your friends and all that stuff. Like that was all lost. So I'm left with, who am I? And so that's when the journey started happening for me. And like, I had to like really put myself out there and like learn how to even talk to people, learn to even how to like relate with other people that weren't church people. And so that was a very awkward point in my life because I was just like, I don't know how to do this. But more and more, I'm just putting myself out there and then just always having an open mind about things. And that was one thing that I was just like, I got to have an open mind. I've got to like be open to different possibilities and different perspectives because, you know, I had to rewire my brain basically, you know? And so just putting myself in these situations, meeting different people, hanging out, putting myself in different experiences helped me to grow and understand who I am and who I, you know, like who's Luis about? What does Luis believe? You know, like what does he think about certain things and stuff like that? And so for me, it just started opening up. understanding who I am. And so that kind of existential dread and crisis that I was experiencing during those moments and times, like, it just started getting better because wasn't feeling that anymore, because I was kind of just discovering myself of like, oh, this is Luis. This is what he's about. This is what he thinks. This is like the type of person who he is. And so, yeah, but I had to go through all that. I had to go through all that, like, relearning. I had to go through putting myself in just in these situations that I felt so awkward and uncomfortable. But the more I did that, the more I developed and grew to who I am.
Shit, if we talk about dread, like, we can even add on a few more questions, man, because it's like, it's not only who I am, but then who or where do you belong?
Yeah.
Where do you go from here? Where are you going?
Yeah.
How do I start figuring this out? Because basically it's like you get dropped in the desert and then it's like, well,
what do I do now? What's the first step? Where do I go? Yeah.
And then you don't never know how long that purgatory is. It's just, shit, it could be months, it could be years, or it could be like
40 years.
I'm waiting for this person. And who knows where you get misguided.
Yeah.
I think for me, how it's come up is in my relationship, and somebody I heard it today, like, said it really nice of, like, marriage, and said, well, you're choosing to love this person every day. And kind of like how that is kind of a shift in, I guess, existential for me, because, it's definitely something, that a lot of people can see differently. Regards to just like commitment, but for me that was kind of like the biggest stepping stone, because, and I guess, I mean, if we're gonna be vulnerable, then we're gonna be vulnerable, right? This is a podcast.
Let's all do it. It's a podcast,
but it's gonna be out there, so
real
people are gonna know this shit.
I thought we were doing that from episode 1.
People gonna know.
Getting serious.
Uh-oh.
I guess I don't know if it's a taboo thing to talk about, or if it even should be talked about, but infidelity, and kind of like what it meant for me in my relationship, in my life, and how it's kind of shaped bad behavior and kind of more punishing behavior, not only self-punishing, but clearly punishing a partner, punishing somebody else. Infidelity is of two, so it's like betrayal. And there was a lot of difficulty with having that self-admittance to myself, and kind of like realizing that this is who I was, and I wasn't always going to be this pleaser to people. I always wanted to be this person to have a good face, but here was somebody that clearly knew this other side of me that nobody else really knew. And it took a long time to realize that, and it takes an even longer time and a stronger person to be the partner, right? And to ask you like the questions of like, what road are we going to take? So it's really difficult, but I'm grateful, because at the same time it was a truth that I faced. That existential crisis led me to feel more sure of the direction that I want to take with marriage and commitment with my partner. Shout out to my baby too. And I guess that's kind of like that moment, that shift in your life, So.
Absolutely, man. Just can feel that dread when seeing some of that tear. Just really shook you, man. And you're right. It's something that you had to kind of come face to face with going forward. I think a lot of times when I hear that question, it's almost like, how do people see me too, right? Not only like, where am I going, like, who am I, but also how do people see me?
And I think that was like a big thing, and that was kind of my identity at the time. Like, how are people seeing me? And I was focusing on school a lot. That was kind of my identity, being a student, pursuing my master's, getting my goal. So it is a lot of that question, but
But you move forward too, right? Because that you had that question, and you had to come face to face with it. But you also talked about how you come now approaching each day, making the decision to love your partner, right? You're talking about that existential shift, that just complete shift in your thinking. I think another one that we haven't talked about yet is also fatherhood, right, Jay? I think you can also tell us a little bit of just what's it like being pre-father and now post-father. You know, you've definitely done some soul searching. You grew up on the East Coast. You came out to the West Coast. You were in SAC. You were in Palmdale. You had some time in San Jose. But I think one of the biggest existential crises that might have even shaken you to the core, as we see a brother Jorge out here, was also becoming a dad.
Yeah. First, I mean, thanks for sharing, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it takes a lot to come face to face with the truth. I think in any experience that I go about my life, like anything that I encounter with, I kind of ask myself two questions. What is this going to do for me, and what is this going to do to me? Right? As an example, with higher education, we all know you go to school, what is it going to do for you and the benefits that it provide, but also what it can do to you in terms of changing your thinking differently, taking on leadership skills, et cetera, right? So I think in any experience that we've been involved with, I think it can relate to what does it do for me, and then what can it do to me. In the sense of fatherhood, I mean, my whole approach, it wasn't a planned thing. It definitely took us by surprise, but prior to that, I didn't feel like I was ready 100%. But
Gonna be ready.
Yeah, you're never going to be ready. But I wasn't ready in the sense like my relationship wasn't where it needed to be to be like, okay, we can take this step when we're ready. You guys haven't met her. John has met her, but in that whole side of stuff, like we were dealing with so much, and I admit, like I had a lot of stuff to work on too, but when it comes to control over your life, like you can only do this, or your partner is forcing herself to come out with you and then sit in the corner and not say anything while you go hang out with your friends. It's just like, it became a lot of that, and just like a lot of tedious things. But again, some of it I brought onto myself because I seen the possibilities of being with her, like knowing that we will have a great relationship. But I also seen the side of it, like, yo, I need to get out. But then I'm always 1 foot in, 1 foot out. That's how it was. But again, I like kind of wanted to approach it differently because all my prior relationships were like, as soon as you see a bad sign, you got to leave, So I wanted to see if we can work through that. And that's what led me to go to Palmdale, is try to work through some stuff. And to me, it only got worse. But I knew for myself that I felt like I had to go through that step and really face the music and face, like, if I do this, who will I become? What would this move do to me? Am I going to submit myself to her rule, or am I going to stand up for myself and just kind of like push back a bit? But yeah, I mean, fatherhood came out about being down there. I've always felt like I was going to be a great dad. I wanted to be a father. I wanted to have multiple kids. But after having my daughter, I realized if I'm to have another child, it has to be with someone that I'm 100% involved, like ready to be with. I don't want to, speaking in hindsight, like I don't want to relocate back down there, try to make things work with my baby's mother, and just for the sake of trying to keep the family, have it at another addition. I think that's just going to deplete my mental health. And that's the biggest reason why I relocated back here, not having the circle down there, her being in my reach, and just like kind of, it's a lot going on. But fatherhood after, like once she was born, like, it's like a precious gift you don't want to like throw away or give away. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a different level of preciousness. You know, this is your seed. This is your offspring. This is your bloodline. And unfortunately, yeah, I had to relocate. I came back up here knowing that that's what I was going to sacrifice, is my attachment to her, being wanted to be so close. And I've constantly asked myself these questions, like, am I fit to do this? Am I fit to be a father? Am I fit to take on this next challenge, which is being a dad from a distance? And again, I also ask myself this: am I a father? Like, I don't feel like a dad. I don't feel like a father. You know, partly because, one, I'm not there. Two, her mother's not allowing me to take the baby up here and to have that one-on-one time. And I'm just kind of like cornered at her home with her parents, you know, while she's in the area. So it's definitely tough. But I think I've mentioned this to John a few times, that I've always wanted to have the family, you know, sense. Right? No matter what happens, I have to have my family, because my upbringing was so difficult. Like, my mom and dad would fight constantly, physical fights, arguments. And it led to my dad leaving, you know, and look what's happening to me. A lot of arguments led to me leaving, you know. So I think me not beating myself up so much, thinking that I'm my dad, you know, was my biggest hurdle. Like, I know my daughter's life will be 10 times better than what it was for me. Like, I wouldn't want her to grow up that way, but I'm going to be an active father. And that's kind of what I commit myself to, is going down there every month, video chatting with her every day, the best I can do, you know. That's what my reach is right now. But yeah, I mean, like, this whole fatherhood has been great. You know, she's definitely growing, getting smarter, speaking Spanish, you know. When I was down there for Easter, like, she said tortilla for the first time. So it was really nice to hear her pronounce, like, tortilla. She said luna, the moon. She planted celery, strawberries, lettuce. She made kale chips. You know, she loves kale chips. So yeah, I mean, like, she's growing so quick, and you know, those are the precious moments that you wish you were able to be there for. But I have to give myself some grace, be easy on myself, knowing that this is not always going to be the situation. But yeah, man, that was a huge impact on my life, and I had a whole bunch of questions for myself. You know, I was depressed for a little bit. I gained some weight down there too. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, you don't have the motivation for anything. If, like, you're attached to one thing for so long, and then you up and leave. You know, so yeah, you know. But then at the same time, like, I felt like Maria was my safety blanket. You know, she got her master's and I got my master's. Like, we were going to be good. You know, but then mentally, intellectually, we weren't there. We were just too far apart. So, yeah, I mean, that's a huge part. That's ongoing.
Well, speaking about going easy on yourself and this transition to fatherhood for you, bro, I mean, I feel like in my own life, you know, it's kind of come twofold. You know, it's shout out Nino, rest in power. It's been a little over 5 years that you passed due to brain cancer, tumor. But I'm also starting this new fatherhood partnership with my own partner. And I also want to say thanks to all y'all motherfuckers out here who helped me celebrate over the weekend, little Tahoe trip.
Tahoe.
You know, and it also felt good to be able to celebrate my birthday for the first time. You talk about being a little depressed with your situation. Jay, you know, obviously Jorge, man, we heard you out here with the tears, you know, that admitting who you are to yourself. Church for you, Lou, that community, man. Talked about adulthood, Jay, right? Maya, adulting with your parents, you know, like we talked about a lot today. and as I've asked all of you to share something, man, I just want to say appreciate each and every one of you for having shared something personal like that, an existential crisis of your own. This 5-year one that I'm talking about is, when my godfather died, I mean, I saw him as like my real savior. I saw him as my father. I saw him as, just my everything, my world. He raised me for 20 years, took my mom and me in when I was 4. Then when I was 24, I died from cancer. But for 20 years, lived every single day with me. I got to have a relationship with my actual bio dad, and he's still dad, and never stopped calling him dad and all that. But when I lost Nino, like, that one just shook me to my core, man. Mm-hmm. That one just really knocked it out. Had to go back into therapy. I started analyzing a lot of what I'm doing in my relationships, just a lot of stuff. And this was the first year that I felt like, and I told my partner this, like, I wanted to have the homies there. I wanted to start celebrating my birthday again because of how hard that transition was in my life, of life with Nino to life post Nino. Yeah. I didn't want to celebrate my birthday. And his birthday was actually on Sunday, guys. It was April 11th, just 3 days after mine. Mm-hmm. So me growing up, I felt like, we always celebrated our shit together. We'd be, all April, we'd be like, yo, what's good? Like, birthday month, and stuff like that. And then after he passed, it was just something that I really didn't want to celebrate anymore. I was so sad. I was so heartbroken. Mm-hmm. And it has been challenging because I've had to do more of that adulting after college life, alone here in Chill House, and now I'm making another transition. I'm going to have a new life with my partner. I've been with her for a while, and now I'm moving into her place, and making this awesome little pad together, raising the kids. And I think 5.5 years removed, from my godfather's passing, I think I'd like to say that I'm trying my best to be a good stepdad. And that's like I want to say the biggest existential crisis in the last couple of years. Because you go from being small to big. I heard somebody say that one time about parenthood, you always look at your parents like, like being like the bigger ones, and like you're like the baby of them, right? You're like the product of them. But then like at some point in adulthood, you move up to like being this equal, right? That's what you were talking about, Maya. Like, you're an adult. But then like when you become a dad, or I guess in my case, a stepdad now, now somebody looks at you like you're the big one, Yeah. And so I think that's been my latest one that I've had to deal with, Yeah. Enough about the emotional shit.
For tuning into Therapy House. Here to remind you to check out our Linktree at Linktree/therapy_house. There you can find all the links for our podcast website, the different platforms that we are broadcasting on, individual links to our personal pages. Like, comment, rate, and review our podcast so that we can grow. And of course, subscribe so that you'll be the first to know when we drop something new. Until then, we'll see you next time.